The quiet hum of the night sky was something no human on Earth could hear. But far above the clouds, a large silver research ship drifted silently. It belonged to a distant civilization known only to themselves, travelers who moved from world to world to study life. They never interfered. They only watched. For them, Earth was just another blue planet filled with water, forests, and millions of small life forms. They expected it to be simple. They expected humans to be predictable. They expected this mission to be routine. But it didn't take long for the team on the ship to realize that nothing about humans was ever simple. The team's lead observer, a careful and thoughtful researcher called Cathar, stood in front of a large curved screen showing moving images from Earth. His job was to collect information and understand how humans lived. At first, everything looked normal. People walking to work. People talking to one another. People buying food, sitting in cars, laughing, arguing, hurrying from place to place. All of this felt familiar, almost similar to the daily life on many other planets. Cathar took notes in a calm, steady manner. Subject behavior appears orderly, he said softly, recording his observations. Species communicates frequently. Species relies heavily on shared tools. Species shows strong social structure. Nothing unusual. Nothing surprising. The rest of the research team sat behind him, watching the scenes appear on the screens. They had studied many planets, and humans so far looked like just another intelligent species with routines shaped by work, family, and survival. A few of them relaxed a little, expecting an easy assignment. But things changed on the third day of observation. The cameras were focused on a wide, open plain with tall yellow grass swaying in the wind. A human park ranger was walking slowly across the field. The team watched him casually, expecting him to study plants or check the area for safety. Then, something large moved in the grass. A massive animal stepped into view. The crew froze. The animal was huge, heavy, and clearly strong enough to injure any creature that got too close. Cathar leaned forward, expecting the human to stop or move away. That would have been the logical reaction. That would have been the normal reaction for any species on any planet. But the human didn't step back. He didn't even seem alarmed. Instead, he smiled a little, lifted his hand, and slowly reached out. Cathar's eyes widened. What is he doing? The ranger walked calmly toward the giant creature. The alien team made nervous sounds, certain something terrible was about to happen. One member whispered, "This is not defensive behavior. This is not even cautious behavior. This is irrational." The human reached the animal and placed a gentle hand on its thick fur. He stood there for a moment, almost as if greeting an old friend. The huge creature simply snorted and shook its head, then wandered away peacefully. The alien stared in total confusion. Cathar replayed the moment again and again. He touched it willingly, he murmured, shocked. This creature could have harmed him. Why would he choose to touch it? The others looked at him, waiting for an explanation. But Cathar had none. There was no rule, no study, no scientific pattern that could explain what they had just witnessed. Still trying to understand, Cathar wrote a note in his report. Subject displays unusual tactile behavior toward large wildlife. Possible anomaly. He expected it to be a one-time event, just one strange person doing something unusual. After all, every species had individuals who behaved differently. So he moved on. But the next day, while scanning a coastal area, the ship captured a fisherman gently stroking the smooth nose of a shark before releasing it back into the water. The team erupted again. That creature has rows of teeth. One researcher shouted, "Why would a human touch it?" Cathar did not have an answer. He replayed the recording on a loop, confused by how calm and natural the human looked while doing something so risky. The shark wasn't aggressive, but still, why pet it? Why take the chance? A few hours later, more footage came in from another part of the world. This time, a farmer stood next to a very large bull, scratching its head while the animal leaned against him like a relaxed pet. The bull was known to charge at strangers, yet there the human stood, completely comfortable, as if danger didn't exist. Another clip arrived of a child petting a stray dog almost twice her size. The dog seemed wary at first, but the girl approached slowly, talked in a soft voice, and soon the dog wagged its tail happily. Cathar felt a strange mix of curiosity and confusion that only grew stronger by the hour. These were not isolated events. This was a pattern, something universal, something humans were doing all over the planet. He watched more recordings. People gently touching birds with broken wings. People giving soft pats to frightened horses. People reaching out to animals that most species would avoid entirely. The research team held an emergency meeting. Are humans ignoring danger? One of them asked. Do they lack self-preservation instincts? Another suggested. Cathar shook his head. No, they do fear danger. We have seen them act carefully in other situations. This is something else. He didn't know what that something else was, but he was determined to find out. He focused more closely on human expressions during these interactions. He zoomed in on their eyes, their hands, their facial movements. He studied the way they breathed, the way they moved slowly and kindly, as if trying not to scare the animals. None of it was reckless. It all felt intentional. There was something warm in the way humans approached other creatures, something gentle that Cathar had never seen before in any intelligent species. It was almost like a deep instinct to comfort anything that seemed scared or lonely. He wrote new notes. Humans show consistent desire to touch other species. Behavior appears linked to emotional response, not logic. The team began searching for more examples, and soon they had hundreds. Videos, camera recordings, live feeds. Humans petting creatures big and small, fluffy and scaly, gentle and wild. A worker scratching a rescue. Cow behind the ears. A man feeding and petting a huge sea turtle that washed up. On shore, a girl hugging a sleepy farm goat like it was a stuffed toy. A diver gently touching a giant manta ray as it glided past him. Every new clip made the aliens more confused and amazed. One evening, Cathar sat alone in front of the screens, watching a long video of humans visiting an animal shelter. He saw people kneeling down, letting dogs sniff their palms before petting them. He saw volunteers brushing cats gently while the cats purred in contentment. He saw children holding small animals with care and kindness. The more he watched, the more he realized something important. Humans were not running toward danger for no reason. They were drawn to connection. They reached out because they wanted to comfort. They wanted to understand. They wanted to share warmth, even with creatures that looked nothing like them. He recorded quietly. Humans seem to believe physical touch can build trust. They treat animals not as lesser beings, but as companions. It was a strange discovery. On most planets, species kept to themselves. They avoided other creatures unless they needed food or protection. But humans were different. They were social in a way the aliens had never seen before. Their social instincts didn't stop at their own kind. They extended to almost any living thing. The team grew more fascinated. They stopped feeling confused and started feeling curious, even excited. They wanted to see more. They wanted to understand these strange, warm-hearted beings who could walk up to a giant animal without fear and offer a comforting touch. Cathar watched the last video of the day, a human sitting on a quiet beach at sunset, gently petting a small injured bird resting in his hands. The human's face showed worry and care, not fear. He spoke to the bird softly, calming it. Cathar leaned back, amazed. This was more than a behavioral pattern. This was something at the very core of human nature. He whispered to himself, they don't just want to survive. They want to comfort. They want to care. They want to connect. For the first time in his long career, Cathar felt something he rarely felt on any mission. Genuine admiration. And he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Humans were far more surprising than he had ever imagined. The next morning, before the sun even rose over Earth, the alien research ship was already buzzing with activity. Everyone on board was awake early, more alert than usual, and their attention was completely fixed on the screens that displayed new recordings from different parts of the planet. The incident with the park ranger had startled the entire team, and now they were eager to find out if it was just a strange moment or if humans truly behaved that way all the time. Cathar sat at the front, hands gently resting on the control panel, his eyes scanning the new footage as it loaded. He was more curious than concerned now. He wanted to understand the reasoning behind such unusual human behavior. Why would someone willingly approach a massive animal? Why would they touch it so calmly? Why did they seem more worried about the animal than themselves? He didn't have answers yet, but he felt that the next few hours would reveal something important. The ship's sensors picked up activity near a coastline, where the early light reflected gently off the waves. A fisherman was guiding a small boat across calm water. Cathar zoomed in, expecting another example of humans doing typical tasks, like gathering food or checking nets. But the moment the fisherman leaned closer to the water, the whole research team stopped talking. A large marine creature moved just under the surface, brushing against the boat. It lifted its head slightly, just enough for the fisherman to reach down. And to the alien's disbelief, he stretched out his hand and carefully touched its smooth nose. The creature looked strong and powerful, yet the human showed no fear at all. He actually seemed calm as if this was something he did often. Cathar leaned back slowly. There it is again, he whispered. Some crew members exchanged confused glances. Others leaned closer, watching every second with interest. No one had expected to see such behavior again so soon. The fisherman gently guided the animal away, with a light touch before letting it swim back into the deep water. Then he simply continued with his work, as if nothing unusual had happened. Cathar replayed the clip several times, observing the fisherman's body language. He is comfortable, he said softly. He knows the creature. He trusts it. And the creature appears to trust him. The team tried to understand what they had seen. In their world, trust between species came slowly, if at all. Touch was rare, almost symbolic. But on Earth, it seemed to be part of everyday life. One of the younger researchers finally spoke. Maybe humans don't see animals as separate. Maybe they see them as partners, or at least as equals. The idea sounded strange to the team, but it also fit the evidence. Humans did not approach with fear. They approached with familiarity, as though they believed kindness worked better than caution. Cathar made another note in his report. Humans make physical contact even with unknown species. Contact is gentle and seems intended to comfort. It was a startling discovery, but the surprises didn't stop by noon. Another recording appeared, this time from a farm in a rural area. The camera, placed far above the fields, captured a man walking across a fenced area toward a very large animal resting under a tree. The creature looked strong and protective. In other worlds, a creature its size would likely chase intruders away. But the human walked right up to it, without hesitation. He placed a hand on the animal's head and lightly scratched behind its ear, as if greeting an old friend. The animal relaxed immediately, leaning into the touch with visible enjoyment. The research team stared again. Kesha shook his head in disbelief. How do they do this? How do they build trust so quickly? His team had no answers. They only had more questions. A few hours later, another video arrived, this time from a busy street corner in a small town. A little girl was crouched on the sidewalk, facing a stray dog. The dog looked cautious but curious, its tail low but not completely still. Instead of being scared, the girl slowly reached out her hand and let the dog sniff her fingers. After a moment, she gently touched its head. The dog relaxed, its body softening, tail wagging carefully. The aliens watched quietly. None of them spoke for a long time. Cathar exhaled slowly. This cannot be random. Humans seem to follow some natural instinct to comfort. One of the researchers asked, "Do they not fear being hurt?" Cathar thought about that. "No," he said finally. "They do feel fear. We have seen it in other recordings. But when they see another creature that looks lonely or scared, something stronger than fear takes over. They want to help. They want to connect." That thought lingered in the air. The team began digging deeper into human behavior. They observed parks, farms, beaches, forests, backyards, any place where humans interacted with animals. And the pattern became clearer and clearer. People didn't just feed animals. They didn't just watch them. They reached out to them. They touched them with kindness, with gentleness, with a kind of trust that made no sense to the alien mind. In one video, a group of hikers found a bird resting on the side of a trail. One of them knelt down, offered a little water, and stroked the bird's back to calm it. In another clip, a volunteer at a rescue shelter gently brushed a shy cat until it leaned into the contact. In yet another scene, an older man sat on a bench feeding squirrels that ran right up to his feet, letting him tap their tiny heads. The aliens watched in awe, wondering how humans managed to form such connections with creatures so different from themselves. What surprised them most was that humans didn't just pet friendly animals, they also reached out to animals that other species would avoid, such as large birds, curious sea creatures, and even animals that simply looked intimidating. But humans didn't act reckless. They moved slowly. They watched the animal's body language. They respected space. They acted with care. Cathar found himself feeling something he had never felt during a research mission: admiration. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but not in a dangerous way. They were unpredictable in a warm, almost inspiring way. Still, he wanted clarity. He wanted to understand the deeper reason behind this strange behavior. Why did humans touch other species so often? Was it a cultural practice? A learned behavior? Or something much older, something instinctive? To find answers, he began reviewing human history. He studied ancient drawings, old carvings, and early stories passed down for generations. And he noticed something remarkable. Humans had been doing this for thousands of years. Long before modern cities, long before technology, long before Earth became busy and crowded, humans lived close to animals. They relied on them, protected them, worked with them. They formed bonds that were not based only on survival, but also on companionship. Cathar realized something simple but profound. Humans connected through touch. Touch was their way of showing trust, care, and emotion. It didn't matter if the creature was big or small, strong or gentle. If humans felt empathy, they reached out. He wrote another note. Human tactile behavior appears linked to emotional connection. They use touch to communicate safety and comfort. As he wrote, another recording appeared on the screen. This time, a wildlife officer was helping a large animal cross a busy road safely. After guiding it to the other side, he lightly placed a hand on its back, giving it a gentle pat before it wandered off into the forest. The aliens watched quietly. One researcher whispered, "They comfort even when there is no need. They touch even when the creature is already safe." Cathar nodded. Humans do not always help because it is necessary. Sometimes they help simply because it feels right. The crew absorbed this new understanding slowly, almost carefully, as though they were learning about something delicate and beautiful. The recordings continued to come in throughout the day, each one adding another piece to the puzzle. Humans touching animals was not a rare event. It was a global behavior seen across cultures, ages, and environments. It wasn't based on logic. It was based on emotion. By evening, Cathar gathered his thoughts. He stood near the main screen and watched the Earth slowly rotating below. The blue oceans, the green forests, the wide plains, all of it hiding countless interactions between humans and the creatures around them. He understood now why the team was shocked earlier. On most planets, species stayed apart. They did not mix. They did not trust easily. And they certainly did not touch without hesitation. But humans were different. They touched because they cared. They reached out because they felt responsible for everything around them. They seemed to believe that kindness could be communicated through a simple hand placed gently on a creature's back. Cathar recorded one final note for the day. Humans show affection with remarkable ease. They do not separate themselves from other life forms. Instead, they seem to include them. He paused, then added, "This behavior challenges everything we expected." He looked at Earth one more time and felt something warm inside him, something like respect. The humans had surprised him again, and he had a strong feeling they were going to surprise him even more in the days ahead. For the next several days, the alien research ship continued to observe Earth closely. It was supposed to be a calm, predictable mission, just another world to study from afar. But humans had turned the entire assignment into something new, something the team had never experienced before. Every hour, the recordings showed something unexpected. Every day, humans surprised them again. Cathar sat in front of the main screen each morning, eager to see what new interaction the cameras would capture. At this point, he no longer assumed anything. Humans had proven one thing very clearly. They did not behave like any other species. The aliens had studied. The recordings started early that day. The first scene came from a quiet lake at the edge of a forest. It was peaceful, with soft fog floating over the still water. A small group of people stood near the shoreline, preparing boats and checking fishing lines. Nothing unusual. But then something in the water moved, a large shape gliding just beneath the surface. One person noticed it and kneeled down. The aliens leaned closer, expecting the humans to step back. That would have been logical. That would have been normal. But the human didn't retreat. Instead, he reached out slowly. The creature rose toward him, breaking the surface with calm curiosity. It was large and gentle-looking, but unfamiliar. Yet the human touched it softly, running a hand across its smooth skin before guiding it back into deeper water. The alien team sat in complete silence. Finally, one researcher said, "This pattern is becoming clear. Humans do not fear the unknown. They seek connection with it." Cathar watched the video twice more, trying to understand how humans could be so calm around creatures they had never met. It wasn't foolishness. He could tell from the human's eyes and movements that he was fully aware of what he was doing. There was intention, understanding, respect. The next recording came from a camera placed above a small village surrounded by hills. This one made the alien team lean even closer. A farmer stood in the middle of a dusty yard while a large animal circled around him. The animal was strong, with a broad chest and powerful legs. The aliens expected the human to step away. Instead, the farmer calmly approached the creature and placed a hand on its neck. The animal relaxed instantly, almost as if a switch had been flipped. The human continued talking in a soft voice, gently stroking the creature's head. The aliens had no idea what he was saying, but the tone alone was calming, steady, reassuring. Cathar paused the footage. Do they teach this somehow? Is there a lesson in their culture that tells them to touch other species so often? Another researcher shook her head. Look at the young ones. They behave the same way. This is not taught. It is natural. The comment stayed with Kethar for a long moment. The next recording supported that idea perfectly. A child in a small yard was feeding birds, scattered around her feet. The birds hopped closer, pecking gently at the seeds. The child didn't run or wave her arms. She stayed still, patient, smiling a little as the birds moved around her. When one bird lingered near her, she reached out and touched its back so lightly that even the aliens felt the softness of the moment. The team watched in amazement. There was no fear, no hesitation. Humans, even very young ones, seemed to understand that gentle movement could build trust. Throughout the day, more recordings kept arriving. A person sitting outside a cafe shared a snack with a small animal, patting its head as it stood on its hind legs. A hiker in the mountains paused to stroke the fur of a calm, sleepy creature resting in the sun. A beachgoer crouched down to touch a large shellfish that had washed up on the sand, carefully helping it return to the water. The aliens were overwhelmed, not because the behavior was dangerous or strange, but because it was so consistent. Everywhere on Earth, across every landscape and climate, humans were reaching out with their hands, offering comfort to any creature that seemed peaceful or curious. Kethar noticed something else. Humans did not treat animals like objects. They treated them like living beings with feelings. They spoke to them softly. They smiled at them. They moved slowly to avoid scaring them. Every touch carried a meaning. He replayed a scene of a young man sitting beside a horse. The horse was nervous at first, but the human placed a hand on its side and waited. The patience itself was surprising. The human didn't rush. He simply stayed there, breathing calmly until the horse eventually relaxed and leaned into the touch. Kethar wrote another note. Human touch is not only for themselves. It helps other creatures relax. The team looked at the screen, confused and impressed. On their home world, calming another species was nearly impossible. Different worlds had different instincts, different languages, different ways of expressing emotion. But humans seemed to use kindness like a universal language. What amazed the aliens most was that humans didn't do these things for reward or survival. They just did them because it felt right to them. One recording showed a woman sitting at a park bench feeding ducks that gathered around her feet. She gently stroked one duck's head while talking to it with a warm smile. She didn't gain anything from it. She wasn't trying to collect anything or use the duck for a task. She just enjoyed the moment. The aliens watched quietly. They don't need a reason, Kethar said softly. They connect because they want to. The team continued studying human behavior from every angle. They looked at how humans treated household pets. They watched how people comforted lost animals. They even observed humans building little shelters for birds, feeding stray animals, and rescuing creatures stuck in difficult places. Every video painted the same picture. Humans cared about other beings. They didn't just say it, they showed it with their hands, their voices, their time. They could not pass by a creature in need without trying to help. One particular recording made the entire team pause. It showed a man jogging along a forest trail. He suddenly stopped when he saw a small animal sitting alone near the path. Instead of ignoring it, he crouched down and extended his hand. The animal hesitated, then stepped forward. The human gently patted its head before continuing on his run. The moment was small and simple, but it spoke loudly. This is instinct for them, Kethar said. An instinct to connect, not to dominate. The more recordings they watched, the more the aliens realized how wrong their assumptions had been. They came to Earth expecting a species focused on tools and machines, maybe a species that kept nature at a distance. Instead, They found a species that felt at home with every part of the natural world. Humans didn't separate themselves from other life. They walked among it. They touched it. They helped it. They became part of it without hesitation. Another recording showed a group of people helping a turtle cross a road. After guiding it to safety, one person gently tapped its shell before it crawled back into the grass. The aliens were fascinated by how natural and unplanned these moments were. None of the humans acted as though they were doing something extraordinary. To them, this was normal. By late afternoon, Cathar stood quietly near the screen, deep in thought. He felt humbled by what he was learning. All his expectations about intelligent species had revolved around logic, caution, and survival instincts. Humans had those too, but they also had something else, something warm and open-hearted. He watched another recording. This one of a tourist standing on a cliffside, feeding tiny birds that landed directly on his hands. The person smiled the entire time, amazed by the birds' trust. On the ship, the alien researchers stared in wonder. One finally spoke. They bring comfort to creatures who cannot speak their language. They calm beings who do not understand their words. How is this possible? Cathar knew the answer now, though it still felt surprising to say aloud. Humans do not wait for trust, he said quietly. They offer it first. That single sentence explained everything. Humans did not pet animals because they were fearless or unaware of danger. They did it because offering comfort was part of who they were. They reached out with kindness first, hoping kindness would return. Sometimes it didn't, but they still tried again. Another recording came in right then. Almost perfectly timed. A person was sitting on a porch during a gentle rain, petting a small animal curled up beside them. The scene was calm, warm, peaceful. The human didn't move quickly or speak loudly. They simply kept their hand on the animal's back, letting the creature relax in the quiet moment. The aliens watched the video until it ended. For the first time since the mission began, Cathar felt something like admiration turning into respect. Humans were not just interesting, they were uniquely compassionate. He looked out the window at the blue planet below and thought, they may be unpredictable, but they are full of heart. This realization changed the direction of the mission. The team no longer wanted to just study humans. They wanted to understand them deeply. And they knew there were more surprises ahead. The alien research team had now seen enough recordings to know that humans were different from any species they had ever studied. But watching from far above was no longer enough. The questions kept growing. The curiosity kept deepening. And the urge to understand humans properly became stronger each day. That evening, Cathar gathered the team and made a decision. We must go closer, he said softly. We have watched from a distance. But to understand humans, we must observe them in their own environment. Up close, the crew exchanged uncertain glances. Visiting the surface was a big step. It meant taking risks. It meant blending in. But it also meant discovering the truth behind human behavior, especially this strange habit of touching every creature they came across. After a short discussion, the team agreed. They had traveled across galaxies for knowledge, and Earth was proving too unique to study from afar. Within hours, the preparation began. The aliens adjusted their appearance, using lightweight disguises that helped them look human from a distance. They studied human clothing, human walking patterns, and human gestures. They practiced waving, nodding, and even smiling. Though their attempts looked a bit stiff, Cathar watched the others practice and said, "Just remember, humans respond best to calm behavior." Another researcher replied with a nervous laugh, "They touch creatures much bigger than themselves. I hope they don't try to touch us." Cathar didn't consider that before. But now that the idea was in his mind, it didn't seem impossible at all. At dawn, the small exploration craft left the main ship and descended quietly through the clouds. The sky was pale blue, and the sun had just begun to warm the landscape. The craft floated down near a quiet forest trail, where very few people came at this time of day. The team stepped out, taking slow breaths, adjusting to the natural sounds: rustling leaves, soft wind, distant birds. It felt peaceful, much more peaceful than they expected. They walked along the trail, pretending to be hikers. It wasn't long before they saw a human figure ahead, kneeling on the ground beside something small and furry. The aliens froze. The human was a woman wearing a light jacket and a small backpack. She was gently wrapping a cloth around a tiny fox that appeared tired and weak. The fox didn't run away. It didn't growl. It simply rested against her hands, trusting her completely. The aliens watched from a distance, amazed all over again. Cathar whispered, "Look at how calm she is. Look at how calm the creature is." The woman lifted the fox carefully and checked its paw, whispering soft words as if speaking to a friend. Her movements were slow, careful, full of warmth. One alien researcher said, "Should we approach?" Cathar nodded slowly. "Yes, this may be our chance to understand humans more directly." They walked forward cautiously, making sure not to startle her. As they got closer, she looked up and gave a friendly smile, the same kind of smile the aliens had practiced, but hers looked warm and natural. "Oh, hello," she said politely. "Careful where you step. I almost didn't see this little one." Her voice was calm and welcoming. She didn't seem bothered by their sudden appearance. She didn't even seem suspicious. It was as if she assumed goodness before danger. Cathar tried to respond naturally. "We noticed you helping. Is the creature hurt?" She nodded. "I think it twisted its paw. It must have gotten scared during the night. I'm just trying to make it comfortable before I take it to the rehab center." The aliens exchanged glances. A center just for helping animals? Humans had that? One of them asked, "You? Touch it so gently. How do you know it won't harm you?" She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Most wild animals won't hurt you if you treat them with care. They're scared, not aggressive. If you move slowly and speak softly, they understand you're trying to help." Cathar felt like he had discovered the missing piece of the puzzle. "Do all humans do this?" He asked carefully. She paused as if thinking. "Not everyone, but many of us feel responsible for the animals around us. They share the world with us. We can't just ignore them." Her answer was simple, but the aliens felt something shift inside them. They had spent weeks trying to understand why humans touch so many creatures, and here it was, humans felt responsible. They felt connected. They felt the need to help. The woman secured the fox in her arms and stood up. "Animals get scared easily," she continued. "A small touch can calm them, makes them feel safe." She said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. And maybe for humans, it was. The aliens watched in quiet awe as she carried the fox with gentle confidence. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't look worried. She just cared. Cathar stepped closer, trying to study the moment more deeply. "You do not fear them?" he asked again, wanting to be sure. She smiled. "Fear? No, I respect them." "That's important. Respect." That word carried weight. The aliens followed her as she walked slowly along the trail. She didn't question why they were interested. She simply assumed they cared too. Humans had this strange ability to trust others before knowing anything about them. After some distance, the fox calmed down, resting comfortably in her arms. She looked at the aliens again and said, "Do you want to see something?" They nodded quickly. She kneeled beside a fallen log and gently placed the fox down. Then she slowly stroked its head. The fox responded by lowering its ears and relaxing even more. The aliens watched incomplete. Silence. Cathar felt something unusual, almost emotional. "You comfort it even though it cannot speak," he said softly. She looked up with a gentle smile. "Who said it can't speak? Animals communicate all the time. You just need to listen with your heart." The words stayed in Cathar's mind. Listen with your heart. No scientist in the alien world had ever said something like that. Datine stayed with her for a while as she prepared to take the fox for care. They watched how she handled it, how she moved, how she spoke. Every part of her behavior was filled with kindness. Nothing in her actions felt forced or calculated. This was natural to her. This was normal human behavior. Before she left, she looked at the aliens warmly and said, "Take care on the trail. And if you ever find an injured animal, don't be afraid. Just be gentle." They nodded slowly, as she walked away, carrying the fox carefully. The aliens felt as if they had witnessed something important, something that explained humans more clearly than all the recordings in the world. Humans didn't just touch animals. They didn't just pet creatures. They created trust. They created safety. They created connection. Back on the ship later that evening, Cathar wrote a long entry in his report. He described everything they had seen, everything they had heard, and everything they had felt. He described the woman's calmness, her confidence, her instinctive empathy. But what he wrote last was the most important. Humans do not comfort creatures to show power or control. They do it to share peace. He paused and added one more line. And their ability to connect with other life forms is far deeper than we ever imagined. That night, Cathar and his team realized something important. They came to Earth to study humans. But humans might end up teaching them instead. After their first close encounter with a human on the forest trail, the alien researchers returned to their ship with a mix of excitement and confusion. They had seen kindness with their own eyes. They had seen how gently humans treated even the smallest creatures. But they also realized something else. One human was not enough to understand an entire species. So the next day, they planned to observe more humans up close. They wanted to see if this kindness was rare, or if it was something shared by many people. As the sun rose, they took their small exploration craft back toward Earth. This time, they decided to visit a more crowded place, somewhere humans interacted with animals often. After reviewing countless Earth recordings, they chose a place humans called a pet park. It was a large open field where people brought their animals to play, run, and meet others. When the aliens arrived, they disguised themselves again and stepped out carefully. The first thing they noticed was the sound laughter, barking, cheerful voices, rustling leaves, and the thumping of dog paws racing across the grass. It felt warm and alive, so different from the quiet halls of their ship. Right away, a dog ran toward them. It wasn't small or shy. It was large, fluffy, and full of energy. Without stopping, the dog jumped slightly and gently placed its front paws against one of the alien's legs, wagging its tail happily. The alien froze, unsure what to do. He stiffened like a statue. A nearby human hurried over, smiling apologetically. "Sorry about that. He gets excited when he sees new people." The aliens looked at the dog, then at the human, and waited for some explanation. Instead of being upset, the human simply knelt and hugged the dog, rubbing its head as if greeting an old friend. "He just wants to say hello," the human explained. The aliens watched closely. The dog leaned into the touch, its tail wagging faster. It was obvious the animal trusted the human completely. Another alien whispered, "Why is the creature not afraid?" Cathar answered quietly, "Because the human shows no harm." The human stood up and smiled again. "Go on, boy," he said to the dog. The dog immediately ran off, chasing a ball someone had thrown. The aliens had barely taken 10 steps when they saw a young person playing with a group of dogs. The person tossed a ball into the air, and all the dogs ran after it with pure excitement. Whenever a dog returned with the ball, the person laughed and petted the dog gently, praising it with soft words. "Good job," they said cheerfully. "You're so fast." The aliens were fascinated. These dogs were not small like the fox they had seen earlier. Some were muscular with big paws. Some had loud barks. But humans showed no fear. Instead, they spoke to them lovingly and treated them like family. One alien researcher tilted his head. Humans talk to them like they understand. Cathar replied, "Perhaps they do understand." As the team continued exploring, they saw even more examples. A small child gently held a rabbit in their lap, stroking its soft fur as the rabbit relaxed with closed eyes. A couple sat on the grass feeding seeds to birds that had landed near them. A man helped an elderly dog drink water from a bowl. Everywhere the aliens looked, humans were touching animals, sometimes playfully, sometimes carefully, but always with kindness. The researchers were overwhelmed. Nothing in their reports back home had prepared them for this. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. A tiny dog barely the size of a small bag ran straight toward the aliens, barking in a playful, high-pitched voice. Before they could react, the dog hopped around their feet, sniffing their shoes, wagging its tail as if greeting long-lost friends. A woman sitting nearby laughed. "Don't worry," she called out. "She's harmless. She just loves meeting new people." The aliens tried to act natural, though they clearly didn't know how to interact with this tiny creature. Cathar slowly bent down, unsure what a proper human petting motion should look like. He extended his hand cautiously. To everyone's surprise, the dog jumped forward and licked his fingers. Cathar jerked back in shock. "It placed moisture on me." The woman laughed again. "That means she likes you." The aliens exchanged fascinated looks. They didn't understand how animals expressed affection like this, but the humans seemed to know instinctively. Cathar tried again. This time he gently touched the dog's back. The dog leaned into the touch, relaxed, and wagged its tail more slowly. Cathar felt something warm spread through him, something he couldn't describe. It wasn't scientific curiosity. It wasn't fear. It was something more emotional, something he didn't fully understand. He whispered, "It trusts me." The woman nodded. Animals can sense good people. Good people. The aliens had never been called that before. They weren't even sure if it was meant literally or politely. But hearing it made them feel something new. The woman stood up and wiped her hands on her jeans. "If you're new here, this place is great to learn about animals," she said kindly. "People come here every day. You'll see so many bonds between humans and their pets." The aliens thanked her in their awkward, slightly stiff manner, and she smiled warmly before stepping away with her dog Dot as the aliens continued exploring. They noticed something deeper. Humans not only touched animals, they listened to them, cared for them, played with them, and even tried to understand their emotions. Dot, at one corner of the park, a teenage boy sat quietly beside a dog that seemed tired. He gently brushed its fur, whispering soft words. The dog rested its head on the boy's lap, trusting him completely. Another human was teaching a dog tricks: sit, roll, jump, rewarding the dog with a treat each time. The dog's joy was obvious, bouncing with excitement after each successful trick. The aliens paused to observe an older man who was playing with a small group of cats. He had brought a bag of toys, little bells, feathers on sticks, rolling balls. The cats chased the toys, pounced on them, and then returned for more. The man laughed softly, treating the cats with the same affection as one would give a close friend. Everywhere the aliens looked, humans were not just touching animals, They were connecting with them deeply. One of the alien researchers finally spoke what they were all thinking. This planet is full of bridges between species. Humans build these bridges with simple gestures. Cathar nodded slowly. Maybe that is why they pet so many creatures. It is their way of speaking without words. By midday, the aliens felt they had witnessed more than they could process. Thousands of questions spun through their minds. Why did humans care so much? What made them feel responsible for other living beings? Why did animals trust humans so easily? But the biggest question was the simplest one. Why did this feel so powerful? Later in the afternoon, they sat under a large tree, just watching the activity around them. A gentle breeze carried the scent of grass and flowers. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating dancing patterns on the ground. For the first time, the aliens felt something that humans often felt peace as they sat quietly. A small group of children passed by, each holding a tiny pet. One had a turtle, another had a fluffy kitten, and another held a bird perched gently on their finger. The children walked carefully, smiling and talking softly to their pets, as if they were precious treasures. The aliens watched with warm curiosity. They were beginning to understand something big about humans. Something simple, yet powerful. Humans didn't touch animals because they wanted control. They didn't pet creatures to show superiority. They did it because they genuinely cared. Their instinct to nurture seemed to reach across species, across sizes, across everything. And animals responded. As evening approached, the sky turned orange and pink. The park slowly emptied as people took their pets home. The noise faded into quiet peacefulness. Cathar stood up slowly. "We have learned much today," he said softly, "but I feel we have more to understand." Another researcher agreed. Humans share something with animals, a connection we do not yet have words for. Cathar looked around one last time at the emptying park, the field full of footprints, paw prints, and memories of joy that would return again tomorrow. He whispered, almost to himself, maybe the secret is not that humans can pet anything. Maybe the real secret is that the world trusts humans to touch it. The team returned to their ship, carrying new thoughts, new questions, and a new sense of wonder. They had seen many planets, many species, many ways of living, but never had they seen a bond like this. Tomorrow, they knew, would bring their final and most important discovery. The alien research team returned to their ship after a long day at the pet park, but none of them felt tired. Instead, their minds buzzed with questions and emotions they had never experienced before. Everything they had seen, from the smallest rabbit to the largest dog, had changed something inside them. They were beginning to understand humans in a way no alien ever had. But they also sensed that one final discovery was waiting for them, something that would complete their mission. The next morning, before the sun fully rose over Earth, they prepared for the last phase of their observation. This time, they wanted to go somewhere humans gathered not for fun or pets, but for connection, rest, or simple living. After long discussion, they chose a location humans called a campground. This was a place where people stayed outdoors for a night or two, sleeping in small tents and cooking over warm fires. It was also a place where humans felt relaxed and open. And the aliens hoped this calm environment would reveal the final piece of their research. When the aliens arrived at the campground, the sky was bright orange and the air smelled fresh, like pine trees in morning dew. The ground was soft under their feet, covered with fallen leaves and soil. A few small birds hopped nearby, chirping happily as they searched for food. Here, there were no crowds, no noise, no rushing. Just families and friends sitting on picnic tables, stretching their legs, or preparing breakfast. The aliens had seen humans in busy places and friendly places. Now they were seeing humans in peaceful places. and it made humans seem even more complex. They walked quietly between the tents, pretending to be travelers, just like before. And then something unexpected caught their attention. A small group of people sat around a fire, warming their hands. They were relaxed, laughing softly as they shared stories. But what surprised the aliens most were the small animals gathered comfortably near them. A raccoon sat close to a woman, nibbling on a berry she gently offered. A squirrel perched on a man's knee as he handed it a tiny piece of bread. Even a shy deer stood near the edge of the circle, watching calmly, as if it trusted these humans completely. The aliens froze. They had never seen wild animals act this calm around any species. How is this possible? One of the researchers whispered. Cathar looked at the scene carefully. They have no fear, he said quietly. Humans must give them something that makes them feel safe. The humans weren't trying to trap the animals or chase them away. They weren't even trying to pet them. They just sat quietly, offering food, warmth, and gentle smiles. It was enough to make the animals feel welcome. One of the aliens leaned closer and whispered, "Even without touching them, humans still connect." They took a few steps closer, hoping to see more, when something completely unexpected happened. Someone from the group noticed them. A young camper, curious and friendly, waved for them to come join. "You guys new here?" The camper asked. The aliens exchanged nervous glances. They weren't sure how to respond, but the camper's relaxed smile made it hard to walk away without seeming rude. So slowly, they stepped forward and sat at the far edge of the circle. The humans didn't ask many questions. They simply made room at the fire and handed them warm cups of something they called tea. The aliens held the cups awkwardly, not sure how to drink it without blowing their cover. But the humans didn't pressure them. They simply continued talking to each other and enjoying the calm morning. A few minutes later, one of the researchers nearly jumped out of his seat when a small, furry creature tapped his foot gently. It was the same raccoon that had been sitting earlier. The animal sniffed the alien's shoe and looked up with bright eyes. The humans laughed softly. "Don't worry," one of them said. "She won't hurt you. She just wants to see if you brought snacks." The raccoon climbed slightly closer, but not in a dangerous or aggressive way. It was simply curious. The alien, unsure what to do, held out a small berry from a nearby bowl. The raccoon took it gently and ate it beside him. The alien froze. "It trusts me," he whispered in shock. "Yeah," the camper said with a grin. "Animals can tell if someone means well. They know before we do." That sentence sank deeply into the aliens' minds. Animals could sense good intentions. Humans knew this instinctively. Maybe that was part of the connection they shared. The morning passed slowly in peaceful silence. Birds fluttered around the trees. A few more campers woke up and began preparing breakfast. The aliens were beginning to believe this was the calm discovery they had been waiting for. But then came the moment none of them expected. One of the aliens, the quietest one in the group, reached down to adjust the fabric of his disguise. It had loosened earlier, and he didn't realize part of his real skin smooth, light, and slightly glowing was visible. A camper noticed it immediately. The camper leaned forward, eyes wide but not frightened. Instead of panicking, running, or calling for help, the camper stared in amazement. "That looks amazing," the camper said softly. "Is that part of your costume?" The alien froze, unsure what to say. Before he could react, the camper slowly reached out a hand, not grabbing, not touching, just offering. "Can I touch it?" the camper asked gently. The entire alien team stiffened in shock. They expected fear, shouting, or at least nervousness. But instead, this human seemed curious, respectful, and calm. Cathar stepped forward quickly, trying to redirect attention, but before he spoke, The alien whose disguise had slipped nodded slowly. He extended his hand, allowing the camper to lightly graze the glowing skin. The human's touch was gentle, soft, almost careful enough not to disturb a delicate object. "Wow," the camper whispered. "It feels warm." The alien stared, stunned. This was a moment they could never have predicted. A human touching something unknown, something strange, something not even from their planet, and doing it with kindness, not no fear. No hesitation. Just curiosity and respect. The camper smiled. "Whatever you are, you don't seem dangerous." The alien who had been touched stared at his own hand, unsure how to process the experience. For the first time, he understood exactly what all the animals felt when humans touched them gently. Connection. It wasn't about control. It wasn't about ownership. It was about trust, calmness, and the feeling of being accepted. The aliens stayed a little longer, but eventually they had to return to their ship. They thanked the humans quietly, their voices filled with more emotion than they expected. Once inside their craft, they removed their disguises and sat silently for a long moment. None of them knew how to begin the final report. They had seen so much, felt so much, and learned more than their mission ever predicted. Finally, Cathar walked to the center console and activated the recorder. He spoke slowly at first, then with growing confidence. "After observing humans in many environments, we conclude they are driven by a deep need for connection. Their instinct to comfort, care, and interact reaches across species. They are gentle even with creatures they do not fully understand. They are brave enough to touch beings far bigger, smaller, or stranger than themselves." He paused, remembering the camper's gentle touch, "and they show the same kindness even to us." The other researchers nodded silently. Cathar continued, "Humans may seem unpredictable, emotional, and sometimes reckless, but beneath all that, they are guided by something rare in the universe, a heart that sees friends everywhere." He ended the recording with a final, simple sentence. "If you approach a human, approach with care, because they may try to pet you." The report was sent to their home world. The ship quietly lifted off, rising through Earth's sky until the blue faded into darkness. Inside, the aliens sat together, replaying the memories of the day. They had come to study humans. Instead, humans had touched their hearts in a way no scientific report could explain. And somewhere far below, the humans at the campground continued their mourning, unaware of the impact they had left on visitors from another world.